Hello, I'm Suzanne Smith. The book About Crows is the debut collection of poetry by Craig Blais. It is the 2013 Gold Medal winner for poetry in the Florida Book Awards. Craig Blais joins us to talk about his work and his inspirations. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, where does the title About Crows come from?
It actually comes from the title poem of the book, which is the first poem in the book. It's a long sequence, and meaning it's a series of poems all on the subject of crows. And at one point in the poem, the speaker of the poem, the poet, quote unquote, tells his sister he's working on a book about crows, and so that's an entranceway into the book itself.
Now, when you say the poet, now does this not taken from your perspective? You put yourself in the character. You have an actual character as the first person in this.
Yeah, it's written in the first person, but for those who are uninitiated to the world of contemporary poetry, it's really popular that you would say the speaker, because poets take so many liberties, maybe with their own lives or the lives of those around them, that it really is a fiction to say that it's the poet necessarily. And I know that while I draw on my own life and my own experiences growing up, there's enough lies in there that justify me calling it a speaker.
You can call it creativity too, not necessarily.
Yeah, exactly.
Not necessarily lies.
There's a fine line there.
Well, where does this book originate for you?
It actually starts in Wichita, Kansas. Well, it actually starts in Seoul, South Korea. I was working out there teaching English as a second language after getting my bachelor's degree, and I was interested in poetry. I'd read a lot of poetry. I was writing it, but it was then when I was with a friend of mine, John Tierney, and my sister came out and visited. I remember committing to it at that point. I was writing poems that none of them are actually included in this book, but they were really the proto poems for this book. In the end, I had to admit that over time they weren't as strong as maybe some in the book, so they got cut. But it was really then, it was 2005, I guess.
So this book has been a long time in the process.
Yes.
You'd mentioned that you bring in your own experiences from it. How does your process work? Does it usually start where you have the beginning poems that inspire other poems?
Yeah, that's the way that I write. It seems like most new poems come out of an assignment I give myself, like related to a poem that already exists. So let's say, if I wrote a couple sections of the first poem about crows, it would be a challenge to me to expand that vision or expand that world. So if we think of the poet as kind of a tour guide to a feeling or an atmosphere or a place and time, the intriguing thing about expanding a poem is to kind of make that world that much more complex and that much more real, perhaps. And so there are poems in here that actually were meant to be a part of the poem about crows, but they kind of went their own place, and I renamed them, and they're discrete poems. But
you mentioned the mood or a feeling. You also have moments where there's sort of a poem will be tied to a historical moment. Mm-hmm. Which comes first to you? Do you think about that historical moment and the mood comes from that, or does the mood flow into a historical thing, or is it tied together at all?
Yeah, they're definitely tied together. I don't know if I can separate the two in any clear way, but for me, I think that a lot of times the poem comes from a particular place, and I want to speak for a type of person or a person I know, or I want to speak from a place that I know and that I don't see in books or movies or anything like that. So, for example, one of the poems comes out of the town of Enfield, Massachusetts, which was flooded for drinking water for Boston. This was something, today it's the Quabbin Reservoir, and it's a place that I visited a lot as a child, but there's a whole history there, that was never told. So intrigues me to kind of tell that story, try to tell that story.
Did you have to go out and research that before doing the poem?
Yeah, I mean, nowadays it's just like, I ordered a couple books off Amazon, and as I was writing the poem, or as I was taking notes for the poem, I was reading through these books, and I was just getting, a lot of them are testimonials from people who lived in the town before it was flooded, and just getting the spirit of those people in, my head while I was writing it. I mean, that helps, but it's really not a poem in the voice, solely in the voice, or locked in the time and place, any one time and place. It's also a poem that explores the speaker poet, like in the present. So.
What are you working on now?
Well, at FSU,
Because you're about to graduate from FSU.
Yeah,
with your doctorate.
I get my doctorate in English with specialty in creative writing, poetry, and for my dissertation, I actually had to write a publishable book. And so I've gone through a lot of different titles, but right now it's For the French and Indian War Dead. It's going to be the title of it. And I guess that goes in with the theme of writing from historical moments. There's a poem or a book called For the Union Dead by Robert Lowell. It was written in the 1960s. So I guess it kind of came out of that. But what I really want to do is write inscriptive poems, poems for people, addressed to people, or commemorating a specific moment or place. And so I find myself doing that more overtly in my second manuscript.
Well, thank you very much, and congratulations on the award.
All right, thank you.
The Florida Book Awards are presented annually to recognize, honor, and celebrate the best Florida literature. The program is coordinated by the Florida State University Libraries and co-sponsored by these groups that promote books by and for all Floridians.